Hey everybody, welcome to Outlier on Air, episode 422. This is the podcast where we talk to the founders, disruptors, and mavens of the world. As always, I'm your host, Ever Gonzalez. Thank you for being with us. On today's episode, we have Brandon Hull. Brandon is a serial entrepreneur and host of the Freelance to Founder podcast. It's a narrative podcast that features one-time freelancers who have built their businesses far beyond themselves. Honestly, this is a podcast that I'm really enjoying right now. I love the way that Brandon is able to bring his guest stories to life. It's a podcast that I highly recommend. On this episode, we talk about Next Restaurants, his side project that turned into a full-time job after he was downsized from his previous company. We also talk about the importance of side hustles, having a successful exit, and his latest project, HelloCast. Brandon was a fun guest. We really hit it off. I think you're really going to like him, his stories, and what he's doing right now. He is a true entrepreneur. He's in the trenches. He's trying to balance family, work, and passion projects. So you're really going to want to stick around for this. Plus, if you stick around, you'll be able to find out how Mike Rowe of Dirty Jobs fits into this episode. Anyway, without further ado, here's Brandon.
Time, weather, and always pass. Case of various
Brandon, welcome to the show.
Great to be on. Thanks for having me on, Ever.
I'm excited to have you on. You're a fellow podcaster. Looks like a serial entrepreneur, right? I mean, this is shaping up to be a really good episode talking about things that are near and dear to my heart. So welcome.
Oh, so excited to be on. You have a great show with an unbelievable array of guests. So I'm genuinely honored to be one of them.
I appreciate it. Thank you. Yeah, we kind of try to go out of our way to get people that are the outliers, the people that are kind of just doing their own thing, and obviously you are one of those people. So we're excited to talk to you. Now, for this episode, we want to introduce you to our audience, right? Who you are, what you're doing, what you've done, and then what the future looks like. And I kind of want to work our way backwards a little bit. I mean, I guess we'll start with one of the things that kind of popped out in the beginning as we were doing research. You're the founder of Next Restaurants. So let's go from there and then kind of move our way forward until what you're doing now with podcasting and everything else that's all these other side hustles that you have going on.
Yes, I have many of them, and I'm a big believer in them. And that's what Next Restaurants originally was, in fact, was a side project that I saw a need for. I was leading a team of sales professionals and client service executives that were serving large restaurant chains with a company that I worked for at that time. And the more we talked to large restaurant marketing leaders, the more we realized they were inundated with choices and cold calls from potential software vendors offering new solutions for restaurant marketing. And in my mind, I kept thinking, if only there was a service that helped people make sense of all of this tidal wave of new software providers to marketing service providers, and there wasn't one specifically for the restaurant industry. And I thought, I'm just going to create it. And one thing led to it. And I wanted it to be objective and balanced as far as the content and so forth, and not slanted towards one product or service. And so I built it, and it just completely took on a life of its own and became my full-time thing for a couple of years. It was pretty awesome.
So help me understand what it did or what it does. Yep. As a restaurant owner, I would do what?
So I've since sold it, by the way, but what it was an objective resource that did primarily three things. One was it educated restaurant marketers or restaurant owners on digital marketing tools, whether that's software tools or specific tactics that they could employ. That was one thing. Made them aware of new ones. And in fact, a tangent to that, like a second thing, was that it was a directory of those software providers, all categorized with an introduction to what they do and a link to them. And then it was a ton of content for actual digital marketing tactics, ways that they could better leverage their email lists, ways they could attract customers, but to build sort of a relationship with their customers and almost like a database on them, a CRM on them, which was not a thing that restaurants really did for the longest time. And now they're starting to get into it, but that wasn't something they did. And I wanted to teach them how they could start thinking in a little bit more progressive way when it came to marketing.
You know, what I like about this story is that a lot of our listeners, right, a lot of them have full-time jobs, 9 to 5 with side hustles. A lot of them are in the middle of, you know, their first startup, second startup. And so I think we can relate to your position, having a full-time job. The side hustle starts to kind of pick up traction. So let's pick it up there. When did you start to think, hey, I think I have something here that's maybe just a little bit more than a side hustle? And what was that transition like?
Well, sometimes, what is it? What is the phrase? Necessity is the mother of invention. Is that the phrase?
Yeah. Close enough.
So I started up Next Restaurants about 6 months before I lost that role.
Oh.
My position was eliminated. My team was actually ultimately eliminated, with the exception of 1 or 2 people. It was a team of 7, and so I had to make it work. So it turned it. Luckily, having that platform and having expertise in the restaurant marketing world led to me being able to leverage that website from an advertising standpoint, from a content relationship standpoint, to a consulting revenue. It more than paid the bills for a few years before I sold it.
Eventually, but was it, because you said it wasn't 6 months, was it doing that at the 6-month mark?
Nope. No, but what it immediately led to was 2 consulting gigs working with startup companies that provided marketing services to the restaurant industry, like instantly led to that.
So from growing, you're focused on it, at least full time with a bunch of other things going on as well. But so once you're running this business, tell us about the transition into getting out of it, selling it.
So I ran that. Well, let me first of all tell you, my career is in sales, providing marketing services and so forth in my life. I'm not a software developer. I'm not a coder. I don't do any of that sort of thing. But I can tell you now, having built a content hub, almost like an online magazine for an industry, the things you learn that make you much more valuable to any future employer, or even to do other projects in your future, I will forever be grateful for those lessons that I learned. But
give us a couple.
Content, just writing content and learning about SEO, learning about distributing that content. I would never call myself a social media expert by any means, but learning about distribution of content through social channels, partnerships. I even frankly, WordPress, learning how the WordPress ecosystem works, hosting. I mean, golly, so many things that I learned from a tech standpoint that I needed to learn because I relied on myself to do that. I'm kind of a DIYer that way. Invaluable, absolutely invaluable.
You know, it's funny. We a lot of the people that listen to the show, myself included, and a lot of entrepreneurs out there, we're good at this one thing, right? Your thing was sales. And you had to learn how to do a few of these other things because you're bootstrapping it, right? You kind of do it on your own. Did it get to a point where you're like, man, I'm way in over my head. Maybe I should bring a team in. Maybe I should, have my first hire. Where was that point?
There was a point at which I hit 2 walls with Next Restaurants in particular. The first wall I hit was the design aspect of it. I knew about WordPress themes and all that sort of thing, and I felt like it needed something unique. So I partnered with a guy who was a developer, and he gave me a custom design for the first phase. And I realized that just my limitations were there, and from a time standpoint, I couldn't build my own thing. And that was important. I'm glad I did that because that was a relationship that has come back around years later to be really valuable to me, and I'll explain that maybe later as well. And then the next thing that I learned was building a list is no small thing in the online marketing world, and collaborations with others. Trying to do that myself was really challenging. Building content, getting that content distributed. And so I ended up finding a couple partners that had their own restaurant marketing content websites that I worked really closely with. And that turbocharged the visibility for my content. Like took it to a whole new level from a search traffic and direct traffic standpoint. And ultimately, it was one of those partners that, when it was all said and done, bought the site.
And it's funny because I think a lot of us, we love what we do. We're trying to build, this product, the service, this business. And then, but a lot of time in the back of our head is the exit. What is that going to look like? Right. Most of us don't get there, but it's out there. It's something that's real that people go through, entrepreneurs go through on a regular basis. What was that like for you?
Oh, it was a major relief. I ran that site for, I don't know, three-ish years. And while I had so many great lessons learned and would never change anything about running it, when you're running an online content site like that, the pressure to write engaging, distinctive content regularly every single week, like at least a couple times a week, it was overwhelming. Honestly, it was really, really challenging. And while it took on a life of its own and eventually traffic got to a point where I didn't have to write every single week, I felt compelled to. So I didn't have to, but I chose to. And when it was all said and done, to know that the site would sort of, live on without me and still provide value, that was extremely rewarding. But on a personal side, really relieving.
I bet.
just really relieving. Just the pressure of having to contribute or produce content so regularly it was nice to be relieved of that.
Yeah, we've had a bunch of entrepreneurs on our show that have had similar feelings, right? Half of them feel like it was their baby. They had a hard time selling, right? Even though it was great for them. But others are like, no, I was ready. Like this is time to go. It feels like that's what you're ready to go. It sounds like.
Well, I had done all I think I could do with it as a one-man band. I mean, there's only so much you can do with if you're trying to build an online marketplace or an online magazine or something like what I built by yourself. There's really only so far you can take it unless you're going to start hiring writers like crazy, which I had contributors periodically. But if you really want to get it to a whole new level, you've got to double down on your investment with it. And I was at that crossroads, and I was ready to give it to somebody who could do that. Okay,
so you sell Next Restaurants. What happens next?
So I translated that knowledge of building content sites into getting into the agency world, the search and content and creative brand campaign, that world, and it's been a pleasure since. Let's put it that way.
So since then, when did you sell Next Restaurants, by the way?
So I officially sold it, I think 2016, I want to say. So I ran that after I parlayed that into a role leading an agency's sales and operations. And I want to say that was 2016 that I officially got rid of Next Restaurants when I had joined an agency in San Diego, a marketing agency in San Diego.
Okay. And that's where you are now, right? In I guess in Southern California.
Yep. I work for an agency called Pacific in Pacific Digital Group in sunny, beautiful San Diego, Cal.
Yeah, that full-time job with a bunch of side hustles still, which I want to kind of get into that reason why you feel that it's important to have side hustles, even though you're fully employed at Pacific. Let's talk about Pacific. I don't want to spend too much time on it, but tell us what you're doing at Pacific.
I am the VP of Strategy and Sales at Pacific. We work with enterprise brands on ongoing immersive content campaigns that have search at their core in order for those brands to be more discoverable in an unbranded way for their target audience. So you think of like the Expedias of the world or CubeSmart. They have very specific customers in mind that they want to be able to connect with, and they want to be found when people are doing searches that are not necessarily tied to their brand name. We build those ongoing campaigns for them.
And so with your history in sales and what you've done with Next Restaurants, I mean, this is right up your alley right now.
Totally right up my alley. Absolutely love what I'm doing. 100%.
If it wasn't for the fact that you're loving what you're doing, what else would you be doing? We'll get into HelloCast and your podcast here in just a sec, but I mean, what are the next 3 years going to look like for you?
Oh, I'll still be at Pacific. We've got too many awesome things that we're doing right now. Clients that we have brought on, clients that we're working with to finalize some situations with that are game changing, like truly game changing clients that are wanting to do big things. And it's seriously, genuinely, really fun to help clients go from want to be discovered to feel like they have a concrete plan to do that. It's genuinely fun to me. I don't see any change on that.
Okay. So the topic that I want to spend some time on is everything that we saw about you as we do research to kind of get ready for this, for this episode, right? I saw a lot of you saying side hustles, great, right? Extra projects, those type of things, do it. And it's funny because I see that and I'm doing it myself. But on the other side, and playing the devil's advocate, right? Where's the line between, hey, going all in on one thing and being the best at it, as opposed to kind of spreading yourself too thin?
Yep. That's a very real possibility, being spread too thin. Having said that, I think it's a very natural thing to have multiple interests in life. I also think it's a very wise thing to be in control of your future financially. And if my day job pays me very well, I do great as far as that goes, but I still believe that my financial future needs to be 100% in my hands. And for that reason, I will always have a side project going on. I will always have side interests. I will either, whether they're smaller companies that I invest in, for example, or projects that I'm personally involved in, it will always happen. I think it's the safest way to be certain of your future is to have multiple streams of income. And if you have multiple interests, all the better, because then you can pursue those multiple interests with multiple streams of income and feel like you're at least a little bit more on top of your financial future.
I mean, you're literally a great example of what you just said, right? With being laid off and having next restaurants that are waiting for you as well.
It was my safety net. I mean, yeah, of course I could have just immediately gone out and found another job right after that. But that was a real wake up call for me when it happened unexpectedly. And I felt like that can't happen again. And if I were to get a full-time job that paid great, I'd still want my own little safety net like that. And so, yeah, I am transparently an outspoken fan and proponent of having side projects that pay as well.
So I'm assuming that there are a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of our listeners that are nodding their head saying, yes.
I hope so.
That's what I'm trying to do. Right. I see the logic in that. So now let's talk about doing that. You talked about other interests and things like that. I'm assuming you're a family man, right?
I am. Yeah.
Where's the balance there too with work and family?
Yep.
That's a tough one for me specifically, but and I'm assuming a lot of others that are listening. So let's try to see what we can learn from you.
Well, I don't have a corner on the market. I'll tell you that. I am married. I have 5 kids.
Nice.
Range in age from 21 down to 9. And so it's not like I'm that freewheeling, bachelor 28-year-old who can talk about side projects, and has all the hours in the day to work with. No, I have to carve out time in the most appropriate ways. Sorry, not just for my day job, but and to be honorable and appropriate, and truthful with how I use my time with my day job. But when I clock out, so to speak, at the end of the day, I have to be really intentional about how I use my time and where I carve it out. And I guess I could just say it's a matter of choosing to invest my time and putting the big rocks in first. Family will always come first to me. And yet I will also carve time out here and there, Saturday mornings, late Saturday nights, what have you, for side projects, side fun, side hustles.
So walk us through a typical day, if there is such a thing in your life.
Wow. A typical day for me, a day that, let's say it's a day that touches on all of these interests. Typical day for me starts at 5. I wake up and I go for a run. One of my kids heads off to school, and when I see him off, I'm in the car heading down to the office in San Diego, at least 3 out of 5 days a week or so. And I'll be down there I'll work out of the office from 7 to usually about 6, head home, get home about 7, spend time with the family up until maybe around, 10 or so, 10:15, 10:30. And then for the next, depending on the night, maybe for the next hour or so that night, it's side project time. Now, that also means sometimes there's a Saturday morning that I need to dedicate for 3 or 4 or 5 hours or something like that, or Saturday evening. But just about every night, I'll be able to set aside 1 or maybe 2 hours every night for whatever project that has my attention that week.
It's funny. So I like that this is real, right? I mean, like you mentioned, family man, full-time job, a couple different things that you got going on side project-wise. It's refreshing to hear that it's possible and that there are many that are doing it, right? Because the stories that get the most attention, right? The 22, 23, 24-year-old genius that kind of starts up his first startup and he makes it big. Those are awesome stories, right? And we've had some of those people on our show. But it goes from all over the place, right? From those young guys with no responsibilities to family men building their little empires, which is amazing. So it's good to see that it can be done.
It absolutely can be done. I think the biggest challenge with most people is one, it's like a confidence thing. They just don't feel like, well, I don't know how to do this part. I don't know how to do this part, so I can't do it. And my feeling is, well, learn it. I mean, there's never been an easier time to learn new skills than the day in which we live right now. And you can learn them rapidly. So if you're open-minded and willing to learn some new skills that may or may not be applicable 5 years from now in your life, just learn them. I mean, nothing bad will come from that, first and foremost. And I think that's a key part of it. The other part of it is, while I'm not a big person that, follow your passion and that your career needs to be tied to a passion, though I love what I do greatly, I'm actually not a big passion person. But I do think, especially with side projects, you do need to have an ongoing deep curiosity about what you do or about what your side project is based on, because there will come times where you need to get something done for it, and you need to have the curiosity or the interest in doing it so that time is not a stressful thing. Like your side project, the last thing it should be is a stressful thing for you. So you better enjoy doing it, whether it's a passion project or a satisfying your curiosity. It's got to be one of those two. Otherwise, you've got the weight of your normal day job, you've got the responsibilities at home, and then you've got the stress of a side project. And that's toxic. That's dangerous.
There are a few of these media influencers, these high profile entrepreneurs that talk, who will not be named here, but who talk about follow your passion.
Yeah.
And I think it's dangerous sometimes, right? These young guys and gals that are like, well, this is my passion. And so they pursue it, which I guess there's nothing wrong with it, but I think a lot of them learn the hard way that, hey, maybe I should go get a real job. And then, on my free time, as a side project, focus on this thing that I'm passionate about. And a lot of these guys end up, close to 30 without any real experience, without any real money. And then what, right? So I agree with you. Do what you need to do during the day, passion as much as you want on the side, for sure.
Yep. Totally agree.
Now, speaking of side projects, let's talk about what you're doing now, right? One of the things that I love that you're doing, I've listened to a few episodes, your podcast, right? You're going into the 6th season of Freelance to Founder.
Yes, that is right. Love that podcast. Freelance to Founder is a podcast that's not too dissimilar from Outlier. The difference between my podcast and a lot of other podcasts is that each of our episodes is a narrative. We actually tell the story, or I tell the story of that entrepreneur that we're focused on. So, for example, we kicked off season 6 with an interview of CEO Tom Kulzer from Aweber, and So it's one thing to interview him, which is how I start the process. It's another thing to tell the story of how he built the company, and it's not for everybody, narrated podcasts, but we like it because it literally follows a certain path. And it's been incredible for me personally to learn from extremely creative, successful entrepreneurs. It's just been a really fun last couple of years doing that.
Yeah, I was pleasantly surprised of the format and how you were doing it, right? I love these type of conversations with entrepreneurs, right? I love doing it for my own show, but I also listen to a bunch of others that are similar just because I like having, listening to two people have great discussion on a lot of different topics. But yeah, it caught me by surprise when you were the one telling the story. And it was, I'm not going to lie, it was amazing.
Yeah. Well,
it feels like it was a lot of work. It's a lot of work though.
It's a chore. It's a major chore, Ever.
Yeah, I bet. I mean, literally, right? For us, I hit record, and I do what I do every day. I have a conversation with a cool person. I stop it. My team puts the bumpers in the beginning and the end, and literally that's it.
Yeah.
This sounds like it's well produced. Like there's a lot of time and effort put into it.
Yeah.
Tell us about it.
So yes, it's a chore, and I'm telling you though, the interviews alone make it absolutely worthwhile to me. But the way we build the show, my co-producer and I, Preston Lee, he runs a freelance community called Millo, and he and I seek out stories or CEOs that have interesting stories. Not just CEOs, by the way. They're just founders of things. Let's put it that way. So we not only look for interesting companies, but we look for the glimpse or the hint of stories behind those companies that might be intriguing. So anyway, we find those. We reach out to those people to join the show. When they say yes, our hit rate is like incredible for getting people on the show. It seems like we really haven't been turned down too much, but we've had some phenomenal guests too, but we'll bring them on. I'll do about a 60 to 75 minute interview with them. And while I'm doing that, if sometimes it's video, and if it's video, I'm in the moment. I do not take notes. I just watch the video later. If I do take notes, if it's audio only, I'm looking for little moments in their past or in the building of their company that are really unique that the story can hinge on. And then I write the script, record my narration, drop in their, I guess you can call them sound bites, or drop in their audio, slap on a little bit of ambient music. We've kind of pulled that back a little this season, and then polish it off. And it is a major undertaking. It is.
Well, no lie, and not just because you're here on the show. It's one of my new favorite podcasts for sure.
That's cool.
I love the stories, and I love the way you present them with subjects, people that I'm actually interested in. So congratulations.
Thank you. Appreciate that. I think the other thing I would probably mention about is that you get some of these some of the people that we've had on as guests, and they're on a lot of podcasts, and we're really sensitive to that. So another thing I like about the show is that, as opposed to seeing that such and such person has been on 15 podcasts, we know that their presence or their appearance on our show will have an entirely different flair and feel to it, and there will be elements added where you get to know the person in ways that you will not on a lot of these other podcasts that they'll appear on. So I like that too.
Agreed. It's not the same story over and over and over again on different shows.
Yep. Exactly.
Twist to it. So you're going into your sixth season. How many episodes per season?
8. 8.
Okay. So far, I mean, what has been your, it might be like choosing your favorite kid, but what has been your favorite episode thus far?
Ooh, man, that's a good one.
If my audience is being introduced to you, right? So they're going to go and listen to your show now. So which episode should they listen to first?
Oh my goodness. Shoot. Let's see. I've had software founders like Brennan Dunn's story is really cool from a couple seasons ago. I think that probably the one I'd pick out is Chris Do. Chris Do is the founder of an agency up in Los Angeles called Blind. And he also runs an extremely popular YouTube channel called The Future, but there's an E at the end of the Future is missing. And he's incredible. And his story, phenomenal. And getting to know him, getting his take on how a person should grow an agency, all of that was really cool. But just his personal story was really fun for me to get to know. And I think doesn't get told very often. But that's a great one. Chris Do, D-O.
Okay. We're going to listen to that one. We're
Season 4.
I go, season 4. So, right, you, in your career, you've been successful, right? You've done some good things. So you're kind of up there doing what most people want to be doing. What have you learned personally from the people that you've had on your show?
Overwhelmingly, like it is way disproportionate, and we did not seek this out, but way disproportionate. Our guests have dropped out of college, went in with the plan of being the typical student, get a degree, go get a job. 9 times out of 10, I'd say they went in with that plan, and overwhelmingly they dropped out, or maybe they finished and felt like, okay, that's behind me. I'll go get a job, but then that's it. I'm not working for anybody. They are a different breed, and they are definitely off the path. You talk about outliers. They are definitely off the path of what we say still today a person should do to have a fruitful career, which is go to college, get your degree, go get a job, do well, advance, and so forth. No. Like that, it does not have to be like that at all. And you should not feel ashamed if that's not the path you take. As long as you still, learn skills, apply yourself, you're pushing yourself to learn and grow and all of that sort of thing. Like as long as you're doing those things, great. But that's really stood out.
It's funny. I like that you mentioned that. I don't know about the younger generation, how they feel. Maybe we could discuss it here a little bit. But I'm 42. As I was coming up, that's exactly what the plan was. That's exactly what I was told to do.
Yep.
Go to school, get a job, right? My father-in-law being very conservative, company man type of stuff. I thought that was going to be my path. And then I stop and I look around. And I'm like, and I'm a free agent. I can hop from company to company and then eventually start on my own and sell on my own and stuff. But what is, and I'm assuming it was similar circumstance for you. What is the younger generation looking like now? I don't think they have that same mentality anymore, do they?
I think if you like polled kids that were, juniors or seniors in high school, which I've had a couple of those recently, I still think they mostly think that's the path you need to take, but they're exposed to the entrepreneurial life in ways that I never was. And I think it crosses their mind now more than it did you and I, for sure, growing up. But even besides starting your own business, I think working for yourself and finding a way to make money for yourself through whatever is some sort of like social media influencer sort of lifestyle, a YouTuber lifestyle. I think those types of, I don't even want to call them career paths, but those types of avenues to make money, to make a good living, I think even those cross people's minds now where it was not possible for me. I was pre-internet when I was a kid, but it was, I think it's increasingly starting to be a path that the youth of today see as possible. Definitely something that, the 20-somethings see as an option. Whether they think it's for them or not, totally different story. That's a whole conversation about risk and all that sort of thing that people assess, but it's absolutely on their mind now more, though I still don't think it's mainstream yet.
You don't think so? Not in their generation yet? Yeah.
I think we're getting close, but I don't think we're there just yet still. Because look at the school system. It's entirely built to produce employees.
Exactly.
Not real, leaders or self-employed people.
That's why we're homeschooling, but that's another story. It's funny. So I'm Mexican, born in Mexico, raised in Southern California. My wife is, tall, redhead, white as can be, right? Very, very different backgrounds. I dropped out of college. She has her master's in biology, right? So I'm trying to think of what our kids' future is going to look like, right?
Yeah.
school wise, career wise, again, because it's different, like you just mentioned. I wonder if traditional college and things that we've known in the past is that going to be their best option, right? I mean, I want them to get as much education as they want, but what is that going to look like in a few years? I have no idea.
There are still, if you go through like a LinkedIn, you just pull up all kinds of random jobs on LinkedIn, you'll still see an overwhelming expectation of bachelor's degree, master's degrees, MBAs, and so forth. You just naturally see that. Now, I guess people can reject that, and I'm just not going to, those types of jobs are just not going to be options to me. I don't want those types of expectations. But that's why I say it's still,
man. That's not for us.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. But I look at it, I am one of those believers who thinks that increasingly the future is about the skills you have and less about what it says on a piece of paper that you did. I went here doesn't tell you what I learned.
Agreed.
In general,
Okay, so from the podcast, which I love now, and you're getting some good buzz, right? I mean, you're getting some great feedback from those that are listening.
It's pretty funny. I'm actually, for the first time, stumbling across my own podcast in places that I didn't make happen.
Feels
like
good, right?
I saw it featured on TuneIn. I saw it featured in the Castbox app. I saw it featured. I don't know where it was. Spotify, I think, someplace like that, and it blows me away. It's kind of cool.
People are listening and they're loving it.
Yeah,
that's a great place to be, right?
Yeah,
it's for our show, and I keep telling people this when I'm interviewed or when we're talking about podcasting. Even if nobody was listening to our show, and we have 400 plus episodes, even if nobody tuned in, I would still do it just because of the benefit that I get personally from talking to amazing people like you and all these other people that we've had on the show. Just because, first of all, I love having those conversations, and then just the things that I'm able to learn from them is second to none.
Yeah, completely agree. I'm with you on that.
Now, like if your life isn't busy enough, you're launching a new company here in just a bit. HelloCast. Let's talk about it.
Yeah, I like a complicated life. Idle hands. What does it say about idle hands? I am not a believer in being idle. That's for sure. I've got proof of that. But so last year, preparing for one of my seasons, Freelance to Founder, and I was working with all my potential guests and what the status is on reaching out to them and what the status is of this episode that I need to record. I had all of that in this Airtable database that I created, customized just for my podcast purposes. And it annoyed me, all of the statuses of this episode and all of the things I need to pull together in between Google Calendar and Airtable and all the stuff that I had in different places just to manage my podcast. And I thought, surely by now there's got to be a tool for this that's dedicated to podcasters, and there wasn't. So I partnered with the guy that I mentioned who developed a special custom theme for me for Next Restaurants back in the day, and we built a prototype for a podcast planning and workflow tool that we called HelloCast. And we found about 105 or so podcasters as beta users who tested it out, tried it out, gave us all kinds of feedback, and we decided there were about 5 more features that really needed to be polished. And we challenged podcasters to pay us to develop them. We had about 4 dozen podcasters that paid us to finish the creation of HelloCast, and we launched for a 7-day window in November, December, and brought on board those 4 dozen or so podcasters, closed up shop again where it's only now being used by those podcasters, and have spent the last 2 months continuing to build behind the scenes for what will be an official public launch at the end of February.
It's around the corner. You ready?
It is. I think, it's actually done. All of the features are there, and now what we're working on are some back-end things that we have to do that are boring, architecture-related things, creating your account, upgrading your account, downgrading your account, and then we're rebranding it, at least with the color scheme and some user interface changes, things like that. But I use it. It does all that I need it to do. It's just a good, clean, fast interface. It's been fun.
Um, okay, so the end of February for podcasters.
Yep.
So how much time are you spending on this project?
So since it's being cleaned up from a development standpoint, my time is pretty light over the last couple of weeks, and will be for another couple of weeks while I'm out of the country. And then when I get back, it's a ton of blog posts, it's a ton of tutorial videos, it's a ton of onboarding elements that I need to bring to the table to fulfill my obligation, while my partner Phil is working on all the development aspects. But in an ongoing way, it'll probably be about, I don't know, 6 to 7 hours a week, something like that. 6 to 10 hours a week, I think, is how we project it. Yeah.
So what is success going to look like for you with this, with HelloCast?
We really don't want, we don't expect, I shouldn't say, some sort of multi-million-dollar business out of HelloCast. We want to offer something that podcasters see as valuable. And if it spurs competitors, awesome. We're fine with that. But I ultimately want 1,000 customers. That's what I want. 1,000 customers that we're doing our part to help them produce great podcasts. And we want people to fall in love with their podcast again. So many podcasters hit a wall because they find out the planning process and the production process. They just never imagined it would be as cumbersome. They just love the time of being on a mic. We really don't want, we don't expect, I shouldn't say, some sort of multi-million-dollar business out of HelloCast. We want to offer something that podcasters see as valuable. And if it spurs competitors, awesome. We're fine with that. But I ultimately want 1,000 customers. That's what I want. 1,000 customers that we're doing our part to help them produce great podcasts. And we want people to fall in love with their podcast again. So many podcasters hit a wall because they find out the planning process and the production process. They just never imagined it would be as cumbersome. They just love the time of being on a mic or something like that. And we want to make that part much more manageable and less stressful, so they can fall back in love with the actual mic time, the actual interview time, and things like that.
Listen, 1,000 users is not out of the question. I mean, that's
we'll get there. We'll get there at some point. It may not be by the end of 2019. I don't have plans that'll be the case. I'd love to get to 250 by the end of 2019. I'm more than happy with that, and maybe 1,000 within a year or two after that.
The pricing, have you figured that out?
Yep. So we're targeting a price point of $99 a year if you sign up for a year for the what we're calling the solo plan. It's a single podcaster as one podcast, and then we're building, for lack of a better term, I'll just call it pro features, even though there can be a pro podcaster as a single podcast. But pro features might bump it up to about $299 a year, and that'll be like multiple podcasts or multiple contributors to the podcast or something along those lines.
I love it.
Yep,
Congrats.
It's pretty fun.
We wish nothing but the best, for sure.
Thank you.
Last few rapid fire questions before we end. Who is your big get for the podcast, right? Who do you want? Who's the one individual that you really want to have on your show?
Ooh, that's a really good one.
Putting it out there. We're gonna make it happen for you. Who do you want?
Let's see. So there's been numerous people that we've sought and got, and then a handful of people that we've sought and got declined on, to be honest with you. And then a few people that we still have holding out that we'd like to be able to approach at some point in time and talk to. Let's see. I'm looking actually at my list that I have in HelloCast. I don't mind telling you. Let's see here. Micro. There you go.
Yeah. Oh, that'd be a good one.
Yeah, and he doesn't fit the mold per se, at least in an indirect way. But he does in an indirect way because actually he's well known for a lot of the shows he's done voiceovers for and things like that on CNN and History Channel and all of that. But the fact that he now has his own show that's only broadcast through Facebook, I find that fascinating that he would make that kind of transition, and the story behind that, his own story is actually pretty cool too, but he'd be an awesome one. He's a
great storyteller too.
Cool. He is phenomenal for that reason alone. I kind of look up to him for that reason. So yeah.
Good. Okay. we'll do our best to try to make that happen with the connections.
You can get in touch with his people for me ever. That'd be super.
Maybe we'll make it a 2-package deal, right? Our show and then your show, or your show and our show. Yeah, it goes.
Let's do it.
Okay, so again, we talked about everything you've done, everything you're doing. And I kind of asked this question a little bit earlier about what the next 3 years are going to look like. But what's the next project? Do you have something in the back of your mind? You must.
I don't have another project per se, but I can tell you that we will be launching a companion podcast to HelloCast.
Oh, nice.
And that's in development, as well as a sort of a seminar type of offering that goes along with that as well. But I officially can say I have my hands full and I'm not looking for additional projects at this point.
Good to know. Good to know. Now, as we wrap up, any advice, right? Again, we have entrepreneurs, we have people that are working 9 to 5 that listen to the show, that are looking to kind of jump into entrepreneurship full time. What advice will you have for those that are trying to make it happen?
Yep. You got to start somewhere. You have to start to narrow your ideas down of things that you have at least minimal expertise in. And expertise is absolutely relative, unless we're talking about like a doctor or something like that. I firmly believe that it's relative. If you know more than the average person, you are already starting to border into expertise territory. But take stock of the areas that you are an expert in, other people that seek you out for, and do some initial research to see if there are other experts out there that you can collaborate with, or that you can additionally learn from, or if there's a community of people that could benefit from that expertise that you have. It all starts with just kind of looking to see what's out there. Are there other people that have this expertise, or that, or is there a gap someplace out there where there's a need that's not being served, the expertise not being provided to a certain community? I think that's the best place to start, is with a community and your talents.
Yeah, I like what you finding the gap, the need, right? Finding your own niche. Can take you a long way. Great advice. We appreciate it. We appreciate the words of wisdom that you've kind of given us throughout this whole episode. Those that are interested in wanting to get to know you a little bit more, listen to the podcast, find you online, where can we do that?
That's the question, isn't it? I'd say there's 2 places I'd send people, and it's not even on my website. I'd send people to either find me on Twitter. At Brandon Hull on Twitter, BrandonHull, or the same on LinkedIn. I'm linkedin.com/whatever it is, Brandon Hull. So those are the best 2 places to find me.
Okay, so Outliers, you can go to outlierhq.com. That's outlierhq.com. First of all, subscribe to the podcast, rate, review it, share it with your friends. We have a lot of amazing guests, just like Brandon. But there you're going to be able to find his website, social media accounts, his podcast, everything else he's doing. He's the real deal. Obviously, you heard him on the show. He's great. He's doing some amazing things, and we're going to continue to follow his career. So, Brandon, we really appreciate you being on the show, and we wish you nothing but success.
Ever, thank you so much. Awesome to talk to you. Thanks for having me on.
Outliers, we'll talk to you tomorrow.